Well, let's dissect this issue of the Corruption Perception Index and, rating Nigeria as the second most corrupt nation in the world. I have joining me my colleague, Mike Okoche. Thank you so much for... Do I say thank you so much for coming on the breakfast show?
Well, the traffic earlier was terrible. Absolutely. Really terrible. But we're here now, so
that's why
thanks for holding forth.
That's why we're making
really
you
interesting.
At the moment. Well, quickly, let us quickly dissect this issue of Corruption Perception Index. The issue of corruption, fighting corruption is one of the raison d'etre of the President Muhammad Buhari. But it looks like at the point we are winning, and again we are losing. So what would you say it's really the reason, apart from, well, some of the issues have been, raised by the Transparency International, but how does this really concern you?
No, the point there is government, like you read in the papers earlier on, some of the headlines say government coming with the position that that is not the true reflection of the corruption issues or corruption in Nigeria generally. Originally, when it comes to the fact of it, actually there is a lot of criticism when it comes to the parameters that are used to measure corruption, because the issues of corruption are so complex to measure it by and make a conclusion by just one score. That is a fact. But however, that is why they call it a perception. Now, the issue of perception there is, if people feel, because beyond all of the agencies and all, if you call an average Nigerian and ask an average Nigerian, walk on the street, drive on the way, sometimes corruption, you can touch corruption like that. You understand? Whether it is from government or it is from private or it's from individuals, as the case may be, these are all the things that are put together. But on the whole, actually, the government is fighting corruption, but whether it is adequate, whether it is enough, whether it is able to set things straight, is totally a different ballgame altogether.
Well, one of the reasons why Nigeria has dropped, again, is the absence of transparency in the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
We know what happened during those moments of the NSAS, busting different warehouses and all that. Why do you think this was, and what do we need to do to forestall such occurrences?
Recall that 2020, the year 2020, from January to December, was a COVID-19, in fact, it was a COVID year. So any country you're measuring, in fact, it seemed COVID-19 was the biggest benchmark to measure any country when it comes to your response to anything and all of that. You remember that many countries were on lockdown.
Right.
So the only thing, one of the most prominent things that you could measure whether countries are administering well or not, are caring well or not, was the issue of COVID-19. Right? Even the issue of terrorism, to a great extent, although we still had it, but the point there is, it seems almost all attention shifted to the issue of COVID.
At least we knew what that did to the Trump administration.
Exactly. So the issue there is, it is only natural, it is only normal to use COVID-19 as one of the benchmarks. How do you measure how people, you recall that in Lagos and also in parts of the country, people talked about the issue of palliatives. Palliatives were given, a whole street will get one small bag of rice to share to houses and maybe one loaf of bread. There were instances like that. And one will say, where is this coming from? It's not even enough for a household. So how does a whole street with sometimes 50 or 100 houses share something like that? Where they don't even know everybody. You don't know everybody on your street.
It beats the imagination.
So all of those were parameters that were used, and people were really dissatisfied by the way, especially when you went to warehouses, and then there were foodstuff in warehouses, and some of them were bumped into,
Another issue is the nepotism. If you want to break that down, you'd be saying the favoritism, commercialization of employment. Okay, you want to be employed, you need to bring some amount of money.
Yeah.
You probably also need to turn your back if you have what you can give.
No, we had a lot of that, and if you ask Nigerians, they talk about this on a daily basis. It is not just in the civil service, even in the political sphere. Recall that Nigerians, the last 2 years or so, have been complaining of the issue of service chiefs, for instance, coming from a certain section of the country and all of that. That is just a little tip, just to give an idea of how, if you talk about nepotism, although the point there is the Constitution puts the responsibility on the president. He has the prerogative to appoint service chiefs from anywhere in this country. But however, the principles of federal character also says that you have to be able to jiggle this so that it spreads across the country. You know, so when Nigerians feel that this is not done, they begin to feel, these are some of the parameters that are used to measure some of these things. You know, when they say justice has to be done and be seen to have been done, that seen is as important as the justice being done itself, because that is a perception. If I perceive that I am not safe, then originally you're not safe, because the state of feeling of safety is almost as equal as safety itself.
Well, those who also make justice to have been seen to be done, that's the judiciary.
Exactly.
Also, before it even gets there, those who will implement the policies, the laws that are there, the police, for instance, you know, they said prevalence of bribery and extortion in the Nigerian police, and that led to the rise of the NSAS protest. We knew what that, you know, did to Nigeria and what it even, you know, did to us as well. So with this, does it look like the Nigerian police, in local parlance, have received some sense?
To a great extent, I don't think so. Right? Now, that is not to say the police is not doing anything. That is not to say that at all, because if one says that, it won't be fair. Now, Nigerians, when it comes to what goes into policing, is a whole lot. You can't take that away at all. It's a whole lot. But you see, Nigerians don't want to know the mechanics, the intrigues, the politics, the economy of what makes policing work. The point there is, a government says we are responsible, we are capable, we have what it takes to ensure that we police the people. The Constitution has put that on the shoulders of the government. So Nigerians, what they just want is go and sleep and feel safe, wake up the next morning and do your business. So the issue there is, if the police is doing whatever they can based on whatever resources that is at their disposal, and they are doing, whether from manpower to finances to equipment and all of that, and they are trying whatever they you know, within their own powers, within the system, so long as Nigerians are not feeling it, and we still have crime, you know, all over the city, from kidnapping to armed robbery to harassment of all kinds to rape and all of that, then it means what do you want people to make conclusions on? We conclude that the thing is not enough.
The funniest thing is that, you know, sometimes when we talk about these issues, even you yourself have, you know, raised so many concerns when you're talking in the course of your programming, you know, that the Nigerians make the laws for Nigerians. Those who are to implement these laws are also Nigerians. Is it that Nigerians are not supporting Nigerians, you know, in the fight against this corruption and things that are hindering the achievement of a better nation?
The issue there is that there was a social contract. The contract has been breached. That is what Nigerians are complaining about. Nobody has any questions as to whether Nigerians or non-Nigerians are the one. The point there is, we are all Nigerians, from the top to the bottom. We're all Nigerians. But there was an agreement that when you become the head of this and the head of that, and we're paying you with taxpayers' money from our taxes, as the case may be, we expect that this and that and that and that will be done. So the moment this and that and that and that is not done, and taxes are being paid, of course, one will make conclusions that the contract has been breached. So it is at that point that you hear the voices of Nigerians saying, we are not comfortable with this, we are not happy with this, they complain of this, and no matter how the leaders try to, you know, use euphemism to put things in, no, we are doing this, Nigerians will not be comfortable. But the issue there is, we talk about the issue of communication. Sometimes it also boils down to the issue of communication. Because you could be doing a lot, and if you don't tell us what you're doing and how you're doing it, we may feel that you're also not doing it well. So the point there is that do it and then also communicate well. so that you're not misinterpreted or there's no miscommunication, as the case may be.
Mike,
so these are the two things.
Mike, they say charity begins at home. For instance, you have your landlord. I have my own landlord. You are a landlord yourself. But then people will be saying, this is your own land where you're lording over. And the way, you are doing this, the way you're administering your administration, if it's just a miniature of Nigeria. So if we want to make you a president, is this what you're going to be doing? In other words, what I'm trying to say is that how does a Nigerian begin to behave? Because our politicians, all of this who are representing us, they are Nigerians. They are not from Mars. They are not from anywhere. So just quickly, before we go to our other guest on.
All right. As it is right now, we say that we get the leaders, we deserve the leaders we get the leaders that we deserve. But you see, it is the leaders who are originally Nigerians. Okay, maybe time is gone.
Not really
right.
that. I'll really come back to you.
Okay.
We have the managing editor, the Avalon Daily, Ayodele Adio, joining us via Skype. Thank you so much for joining us on Breakfast program. So what would you say about these latest ratings of the Corruption Perception Index of Nigeria?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm not surprised that the latest index that we're falling off the ladder. It's clear if you look at the way that we've handled our affairs in the last 1 year. You'll recall that we had a huge NDDC scandal last year where billions of naira were spent without due process, and very many of those billions could not be accounted for. You also saw how we handled the COVID-19 crisis, particularly with respect to the disbursement of funds and palliatives to citizens, where it was shrouded with a lot of irregularities. Many of it was opaque, and it didn't get to many citizens. So that alone gives you a pointer, to the level, to the lack of transparency, at the heart of government in Nigeria, and not to talk of the mind-boggling corruption in most government offices. It explains to you that, and it's quite clear to me that I'm not surprised that we have suddenly falling off the ladder in the ranking, and except we go back to the basics where public officers are accountable to the people, where procurements and of course disbursements are quite transparent. We'll continue to fall off this ladder, and of course at the end of the day it's the Nigerian people who feel the brunt of this corruption, because it's a perception index, and it means everywhere in the world that you travel to, the average Nigerian will be viewed as being corrupt, because people in government have tremendously failed to handle their affairs, to be basically transparent, accountable, and of course hold their offices with dignity.
Really, there is too much to talk about. Ayodele, you may want to hang on a bit, and Michael Koche will definitely come back after this break. Do stay with us.
For over 70 years, we've practiced healthy hygiene habits together. The world needs us to keep our fight going against germs. So let's wash our hands for 20 seconds regularly. Dettol. Protect what's worth fighting for.
You're watching TVC Breakfast. I still have with me my colleague, Mike Okoche, and also managing editor of the Avalon Daily, Ayodele Adio, who is joining us via Skype. Let me quickly come back to you on this. You were on a thought. It has moved from what we used to, what we were in 2019, from 146 to out of the 180 countries, and we're coming to second after West Africa with, West Africa with Guinea-Bissau, the only country more corrupt than Nigeria in the sub-region. Should there just be a country that is more corrupt than Nigeria, and Nigeria should just be a country that is not corrupt? How can we achieve this feat that when the Nigerian name is mentioned or the Nigerian country is mentioned anywhere in the world, they see us as better people and a better nation?
I think it starts with the political will to eliminate corruption. We talk a lot about Lee Kuan Yew here in Nigeria and the Renaissance that he led in Singapore. But that turnaround only started, by tackling the vicious, hydra-headed monster of corruption in Singapore. There was zero tolerance for corruption, and public officers were held to the highest standards. Of course, the government decided to increase pay of civil servants and public officers so that they are not lured into corruption. But my point is that there was a zero tolerance for corruption. If you watched the international news yesterday, or was it the day before, where a senior Chinese government official was sentenced to death for misappropriating public funds and for embezzling a couple of millions of dollars. That's a zero-level tolerance for corruption, and that's what you want to see from our leaders at the top and from all sectors of government in Nigeria. There has to be zero tolerance for corruption. But of course, there also has to be an institutional framework that discourages corrupt practices or rent-seeking mechanisms in government. For instance, you saw how we handled the NIN registration. When you create an opportunity where thousands of people have to throng into a tiny office to get registered, you create a situation where people would have to pay bribes to get a simple national ID card. So it seems to me like our system in itself tacitly encourages corrupt practices by creating inefficient systems for public officials to exploit. So whether it's our borders, whether it's registrations of passports or ID cards, our systems are grossly inefficient, and it encourages public officers to seek alternative means of rendering these public services, and that's by you paying out of pocket
All right,
for you to basic service.
All right. Well, you mentioned the issue of systems, having adequate various system in the country. Well, it looks like Nigeria has won some, lost some. The agency, the CI agency, said they are not oblivious of some of the successes recorded by Nigerian government, such as the transparency portal managed and implemented by the Office of the Auditor General. One of it is the important anti-corruption legislations, such as the Companies and Allied Matters Act, that's the CAMA 2020. But then they say that there's still lack of accountability in some quarters of the government, especially in terms of beneficial owners of lucrative government contracts. So they say that we are still, we are kind of being on track, but there's much to be done. With this, what more would you say should be put on the table so that we can have a better country?
I think the most important thing for me will be the digitization of most of the processes of government in Nigeria. The moment we can make a lot of these processes digital and reduce human-to-human interface, and of course improve efficiency of these systems, we'll be able to eliminate over 50% of the corrupt practices that we see in Nigeria every single day. Think of the trains, for instance. Just by making the purchasing of tickets digital, we seem to have eliminated the gross inefficiencies that we witnessed when you just simply wanted to buy a train ticket from Abuja to Kaduna. And that was simply because we simply invented a basic technology. So I think for me that if we embrace a lot of technology and eliminate a lot of inefficiencies in government, we will be able to eliminate over 50% of the corrupt practices that we see in public offices. There will be no opportunities for rent seeking, and there will be no opportunities for public officers to fleet innocent citizens or force them to pay out of pockets to get basic services, for themselves. So I think that technology is the way to go. Improving the efficiencies of our systems and making government a lot more effective would help us to eliminate the corruption.
Makes sense. Managing Editor, the Avalon Daily, Ayo Dele Adio. Thank you so much. Your opinions are really, really very important at this time. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So I still have my colleague with me, Mike Okoche. Mike, as a communication expert, you also said we need to do more in communicating all of our gains, to Nigerians. And we were on the point of, okay, you being a landlord, maybe being a tenant, the way you administer your own lordship on your own land, on your property, is it fair enough? Because on the other side, if you become a president of Nigeria, is this how you're going to be doing? So that is talking about Nigerians doing the right thing and the right time and communicating very effectively. So that is where I wanted to come in.
Now, the point there is, in administration, there's what they call theory X and theory Y. Theory X states that an average human being has natural dislike for work. Naturally. You won't work if nothing is pushing you, you just feel you won't work. And theory Y states that you will work only, or most likely, if there's going to be benefit or consequence at the end of the day. Do you understand? Fine. So the point there is, like the landlord scenario you created, the analogy you created. Yeah. An average landlord or average Nigerian will be will be whoever they want to be. But because we know that in the state of nature, where there are no laws and there are no standards, anybody can wake up and do anything anyhow. That is why there are laws. It is the government that charts the course. It is the government that gives that direction. It is the government that gives that guide. No, we need standards. There's no support. We're not supposed to do this way. There are tenancy laws that's supposed to protect the tenant from the landlord. Also give some level of benefit to the landlord for the investment they've done. There are already standards in that regard. So when a landlord violates those standards, there are procedures. When a tenant violates those standards, there are procedures. So nobody's expected to take laws into their hands. So it boils down to what Ayodele was saying earlier. The will of government to implement is most important here. Because the point there is that when we go back to the issue of rule of law, if they say there is rule of law, whether you are the minister or you are a senator or you are anybody on the street, the moment you violated the law, the consequences should come. You know, so the moment you do that, everything will begin to fall in line. That's how it is.
That's really, really very thoughtful. Thank you so much, my colleague, broadcast journalist Mike Okoche. Thank you so much for coming. For coming on the show.
To coming on my show. That's nice.
For coming on your show.
Yeah, exactly. No, but it's good to have you on anyway.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very kindly.